Mira didn't wait for the ceremony to end. Her veil still clung to her braid, soaked by the rain that had begun moments after the vows were shattered. The preacher had barely opened his Bible before her groom, a proud rancher's son named Hank, stepped back, lifted his hands, and said for all to hear, "I can't marry her. She ain't pure." Gasps echoed through the wooden chapel. Mira stood frozen, her cheeks burning, heart pounding, the lace of her dress suddenly suffocating. "That's not true," she whispered, but no one moved, not even her father, not even her sister. Hank's mother let out a hiss. "We warned him. A girl raised by drifters has no right to wear white." Mira turned and ran. Through the doors, into the storm, down the muddy slope past the shocked faces of guests who wouldn't meet her eyes. Her satin shoes sank into muck. Her tears mixed with rain. By the time she reached the tree line, thunder cracked like judgment. She didn't stop. The path wound upward, twisting into a forest she didn't know, but she didn't care. Her lungs burned, her dress tore, her sobs were swallowed by the storm. "Not pure." The words repeated like a curse. She fell once, twice, knees scraped, palms bleeding, but she got up. Again. And again. It wasn't until she reached the open plateau near the ridge that her body gave out. Mira collapsed beside a boulder, her breath heaving, soaked to the bone and shaking from cold and humiliation. "Let the storm take me," she whispered. "It's better than crawling back." And then she heard the hoofbeats. Slow, measured, purposeful. She looked up, expecting a lawman or worse, but the figure that emerged from the trees was unlike any she'd seen. A tall man on a painted horse, his dark braids tied with leather, feathers fluttering in the rain. He dismounted silently, crouched beside her without speaking. His eyes were sharp, but his expression was calm. He reached out, offering a blanket from his saddle. She flinched. "Why are you helping me?" The man's voice was low, steady. "Because storms don't lie, people do." She stared at him, unsure if he was real, but his warmth was. His presence was. And in that moment, beneath the thunder, she realized she wasn't alone anymore. Not yet. Not anymore. Mira awoke to warmth. Not sunlight, but firelight flickering against thick hides and the scent of pine smoke curling through a wooden lodge. She sat up slowly, muscles aching, every breath a reminder of the night before. Her dress was gone, replaced by a dry tunic and soft leggings. Her hands were bandaged. A pot simmered in the corner. And the warrior, the one who had found her in the storm, sat quietly near the fire, sharpening a blade. "Where am I?" she asked, voice hoarse. He didn't look up. "Safe." "Your name?" "Tahu." The name rolled like thunder held in a whisper. "Sioux?" she guessed. He nodded once. "You ran from something," he said without turning, "and it nearly killed you." Mira's hands curled into her lap. "They called me unworthy. He left me at the altar." Silence. Then, "Men fear what they cannot possess." "He said I wasn't pure," she added bitterly. "But he was the one who—" She stopped. Shame twisted her gut, but Tahu's voice interrupted. "You don't owe me that story." She looked at him, surprised. "You're the first man who said that." "Because I'm not here to judge, only to offer what the storm could not." Mira pulled the blanket closer. "Why help me?" "Because you didn't die," he said simply, "and those who survived the storm are meant for more." She stared into the fire, the flames reflecting in her eyes like something awakening. "What now?" "Well, you decide," he replied. "You can return to them, or stay and find something new." "What would I even be here?" "Alive," he said, "and that's more than most who crawl back ever get to be." She didn't answer, but something in her chest loosened, something held too tightly for too long. That night, as the fire cracked low and Tahu stood watch outside the lodge, Mira curled into the furs, not as a rejected bride, but as a woman breathing for the first time without chains. She didn't know if she'd ever be whole again. But in this silence, in this strange new shelter, she wasn't broken either. She was becoming something else, something stronger. And though she hadn't spoken the words aloud, she hoped Tahu would still be there when she found out what that was. Mira rose with the dawn, her breath curling in the cool air as she stepped outside the lodge. Tahu stood near the edge of the clearing, bare-chested beneath the rising sun, practicing with a spear in quiet, fluid movements. Every thrust and turn was precise, like he was in conversation with the earth itself. She watched, arms crossed, unsure if she was admiring him or envying his peace. "How long have you lived out here?" she asked when he noticed her. "Since the soldiers took my last home," he replied, lowering the spear. "This land remembers me, even if the world doesn't." Mira nodded, understanding more than she expected. "Everyone in that town knows my name, but none of them ever saw me." "Then they don't deserve your story," he said. She walked closer. "I don't even know what my story is anymore." Tahu pointed to the fire pit. "Sit. We'll start there." They spent the day clearing deadwood from a nearby trail, Mira working beside him without complaint. Her dress was gone, her hands blistered, her muscles sore. But it felt good. Honest. Real. She caught herself laughing once when she tripped over a root, and when she looked at Tahu, he smiled. A small thing, but powerful. That night, they sat by the fire again, eating from the same bowl. "You know," she said softly, "I thought the storm would end me. And maybe it did." Tahu's eyes met hers. "Maybe it burned away what needed to die." "Like what?" "The lie that you were only what they said you were." She looked down, her fingers brushing the dirt. "It still hurts, how fast they turned on me. Even my father said nothing." "Pain is proof you survived," he said. "But survival isn't the end. It's just the place where something new begins." "And what is that?" she asked. "Whatever you choose." He leaned back, eyes on the stars. "You're not a bride anymore, Mira. You're something rarer, a woman forged in fire who chose to live." She didn't speak, just let the words settle in her chest. For the first time in days, she didn't feel like running. She felt like staying. Not because she had to, but because, beside Tahu, she was starting to feel like someone worth fighting for, even if the fight was still inside her. Mira hadn't planned to go back, but when Tahu offered her a horse and a question, "Do you want them to believe they broke you?" she knew the answer. They rode at sunrise, skirting the trails until the church steeple peeked over the trees. Her heart pounded. She hadn't crossed the town line since the storm, since Hank tore her name apart with one sentence. Now she returned with her head held high, scars visible, and no veil to hide behind. The townsfolk turned when she rode in beside Tahu. Whispers snapped like dry twigs. "Is that her? Back already? Who's the savage with her?" Mira dismounted slowly, dress dusty, boots scuffed, but her spine straight. Tahu remained by her side, calm and unreadable. The preacher stepped forward. "Mira, you're not welcome here, not after what happened." "After what he did," she corrected. "You all watched him lie." "That's not for us to judge." "But you did. You did when you said nothing." Her voice rang out, cutting through the morning air. Hank emerged from the blacksmith's, lips curled in surprise. "You really brought him here?" he sneered, nodding at Tahu. "You're worse than I thought." "You never knew what I was," Mira said. "You just feared it." "I saved you from disgrace," he snapped. "No, you tried to disgrace me because I wouldn't keep your secrets." Gasps scattered through the crowd. Hank went red. "She's lying." "You said you wanted purity," Mira interrupted. "But what you wanted was silence." Tahu stepped forward, not with a weapon, but with stillness that made every man flinch. "The storm didn't kill her," he said. "It revealed you." Mira turned away from Hank, her gaze sweeping over the faces that once turned from her. "I'm not here to beg. I came so every girl hiding in shame knows what strength looks like." She mounted her horse again, voice steady. "You won't see me again, but you'll remember me, and that memory will burn." They rode out without looking back. The town, once her prison, now lay behind her like a shed skin. Tahu said nothing as they rode, but when she looked at him, his nod was small, proud. "Did I do the right thing?" she asked. "You did the brave thing," he replied. "That's rarer." And in her chest, something bloomed that felt a lot like freedom. Mira didn't speak much on the ride back. Not because she had nothing to say, but because for the first time in her life, she didn't need to fill the silence to be heard. Tahu rode beside her, steady as stone, the wind rustling the feathers tied into his braid. When they reached the clearing, she dismounted and sat by the riverbank, watching the water ripple like the thoughts she hadn't yet sorted. Tahu joined her without a word. After a long while, she asked, "Do you always live like this? Alone in the trees?" "Not alone," he said. "The earth speaks. The wind carries memory, but yes, away from men. Because they took something from you? Because they tried." She turned to face him. "What did they try to take?" Tahu looked at her with eyes that held more pain than she'd ever dared admit in herself. "My family. My name. My reason to speak." She swallowed hard. "And you stayed quiet?" "For a long time. Until you." Mira blinked, unsure she heard him right. "Me?" "You walked into a storm rather than kneel to a lie. That sound echoes louder than any drum." She looked away, ashamed. "But I was afraid." "Only fools aren't." His voice softened. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the refusal to let it rule you." Her throat tightened. She hadn't expected him to see her. Really see her. But he did. Not as damaged, not as discarded, as defiant. "I thought being cast out meant I had nothing," she whispered. "But now, I feel like I'm becoming someone." "You are. Someone strong? Stronger than they'll ever be." The fire crackled behind them as night fell, and Mira leaned back, watching the stars claim the sky. "What do you see when you look at me?" she asked. Tahu didn't hesitate. A storm that lived. Her eyes burned. She turned toward him, reaching slowly. He met her halfway, pressing his forehead gently to hers. "I don't know where this leads," she whispered. "Then we find it together," he said. And in that stillness, she didn't feel like a ruined bride anymore. She felt like something new, like a woman not rescued, but risen. And the man beside her? He didn't offer salvation. He offered something harder, something holier. A heart that didn't ask for hers, but honored it. Mira began building a new rhythm, chopping wood in the mornings, grinding herbs with Tahu in the afternoons, and sitting beneath the pines by evening, where stories were shared without pressure, without shame. Each day peeled away another layer of the girl who had stood frozen at the altar. In her place, something sturdier was growing. On the 6th night, Tahu handed her a carved piece of cedar shaped into a pendant. The design was simple, a spiral flame etched with care. "What's it mean?" she asked, turning it in her palm. "In our stories," he said, "fire is not destruction. It's memory, carved into wood so it never fades." Mira looked up at him, throat tight. You think I'm something worth remembering? You already are. She slipped the pendant over her head, letting it rest against her heart. I don't know what to do with all this, she said. This peace, this safety. You let it stay, he said, and if it tries to run, you chase it. That evening, a storm threatened again, wind curling through the trees like a reminder of how far she'd come. But Mira didn't flinch. She walked outside and stood in the clearing, letting the first drops hit her skin. Tahu stepped beside her, watching. Afraid it'll take you again? Not this time, she whispered. This time, I'm not alone. They walked side by side to the edge of the hill, where the valley opened wide. Do you think they'll come looking for me? She asked. Not the ones who mattered, he said, and the ones who didn't, let them stay blind. Mira exhaled slowly, her hand brushing his. I want to stay here, not just in your lodge, but in your life. Tahu turned toward her, the firelight of his gaze steady. Then we build something from truth, nothing else. What if I don't know how? She asked. You already started, he said, when you chose to walk into the storm instead of bow to it. She leaned into him then, her head resting on his chest, the rain soft now, almost sacred. In that moment, under the sky that once tried to bury her, Mira finally felt it. Not just safety, not just warmth. She felt wanted, seen, and for the first time in her life, home. Mira had just returned from gathering berries when she saw the smoke on the horizon. Not wild, but deliberate. A campfire. Too close to the edge of Tahu's territory to be chance. She hurried back to the lodge, heart pounding. Tahu met her at the edge of the clearing. They're watching, he said, calm but alert. Someone from the town? Mira asked. Not just someone. 3 riders. One wears a preacher's collar. Mira's breath caught. They found me. Tahu nodded. But they haven't come closer. Yet. She sat on the steps of the lodge, hands clenched in her lap. They want me to crawl back. Pretend nothing happened. They want your silence, Tahu corrected. Your obedience. But I have no name left there. No family. No place. You have your truth. That's more dangerous to them than your absence. She looked up at him, eyes searching. Should I go? Tahu knelt before her. Only if you're ready to stand. That evening, Mira walked with him to the ridge. The riders were still there, 3 silhouettes by a low fire. The preacher saw them and stood. Mira, your father's dying. He wants to see you. Her breath hitched. He never defended me, not once. He regrets it, the preacher called. He wants to make it right. Tahu placed a steady hand on her back. This is yours to decide. Mira stepped forward, voice strong. If he wanted to make it right, he'd have come himself. He's weak. So was I, until I stopped being quiet. The preacher's expression hardened. You'd throw away blood for this? A stranger? No, Mira said. I threw away those who spilled mine. She took Tahu's hand and turned. Tell him I forgive him, but I won't return to a house that only ever saw me as shame. As they walked away, the preacher called after her. You'll regret this. Tahu paused, glancing back. She regretted staying, never leaving. That night, Mira wept, not for sadness, but release. Tahu held her in silence, and when her tears ran dry, she whispered, They came to reclaim the girl they abandoned. But found the woman they couldn't control, he replied. And somewhere deep inside her, the final chain broke. Mira rose before dawn and began stacking stones, flat ones she'd gathered from the riverbank, smooth and pale like old bones. What are you building? Tahu asked, watching from the edge of the fire pit. A marker, she replied. For the girl I used to be." He nodded once, respectfully silent. She worked until midday, placing the last stone with trembling hands, not from weakness, but weight, the emotional kind. "That's where she ends," Mira said, stepping back, "and where I begin." The days that followed were strangely light. Tahu taught her how to track deer and read wind through pine needles. Mira taught him how to stew wild herbs with dried berries and sweet bark. They built new habits like children building forts, imperfect but joyful. One evening, as she returned from bathing in the creek, she found a necklace hanging on the door, a single blue bead strung between braided leather. "What is this?" she asked. Tahu emerged from the trees, his voice softer than usual. "In our way, it's a sign, not of possession, but of recognition." "Recognition?" "That I see you," he said, "as equal, as fire, as storm." Mira clutched the necklace, overcome. "I don't have anything to give you." "You already gave me something," he said. "You stayed." They didn't call it love. They didn't need to. The way Tahu looked at her, the way he kept space without distance. It was more sacred than any vow she'd once hoped for in a church. That night, Mira dreamed of the chapel, but this time she wasn't standing at the altar. She was standing outside, watching it burn. And beside her, Tahu held her hand, his expression calm as the flames rose. When she woke, she found herself whispering, "Thank you." "For what?" he murmured. "For finding me when I didn't know I was still alive." He brushed a thumb across her cheek. "You weren't lost, just waiting to rise." The storm that had nearly killed her now lived inside her bones, not as a wound, but a rhythm. And in this quiet hollow, Mira finally understood. Survival wasn't just escape. It was transformation. And no one, not a preacher, not a father, not a groom with a bitter tongue, could touch what she'd built in this place. This was hers, and she had earned every piece of it. Mira stood at the center of the clearing as a soft drumbeat echoed from Tahu's hands, the rhythm ancient, slow, steady, like the land itself was breathing with them. Around the fire, neighbors had come, women with tired eyes, a boy who limped, an elder who had not spoken in years. Tahu had invited them quietly, one by one, from nearby ridges and shadowed valleys. They had all lost something: land, names, dignity. And yet here they were, watching Mira with cautious reverence. "They came because they saw what you built," Tahu whispered to her. "Because you are the fire that didn't die." Mira stepped forward, the flamelight glinting in her eyes. "I was once called many things, ruined, impure, shameful. But I've learned those were not my names. They were projections of their fear." Murmurs of agreement stirred the circle. Mira held up the blue-beaded necklace Tahu had given her. "This is the only name I need now. Not one tied to a man's approval or a town's silence, but to the truth I lived through. I name myself Wakia, thunder, because I was struck down, and I rose." The elder let out a breath, then began to clap. Slowly, rhythmically. Others followed. The clearing swelled with voices, not loud, but full, not wild, but free. Tahu stepped beside her, his hand resting gently at her back. "You carry your name now like a blade," he said, "and I'll stand with you as long as you choose to hold it." "And if I falter?" she asked, voice cracking. "Then we stand still together," he replied, "until you're ready to walk again." Later, as the fire burned low and the circle dispersed, Mira and Tahu sat side by side, wrapped in hides, watching stars scatter like ash across the night sky. "Do you ever think of leaving this place?" she asked. "Only if you lead the way," he answered. "But here, this feels like where something began." "It did," Mira said softly. "But maybe not just for me. He looked at her. You've built more than a home. You've built a way back for others. She nodded. Then let them come. We'll teach them how to rise too. And in that moment, Mira, no longer a bride, no longer a castaway, felt her name ripple through the trees, as strong and certain as thunder rolling across the plains. Mira walked alone to the ridge at sunrise, wrapped in a deerskin cloak, her breath rising in clouds as the valley lit with gold. Below her stretched everything they'd built: huts and gardens, drying racks and fire pits, laughter already rising from waking children. It had been a year since the storm. A year since she was left at the altar with the weight of someone else's shame. Now, she stood taller, her spine no longer bowed by apology, her voice no longer afraid of its own echo. Tahu joined her quietly, stepping beside her without a word. She turned to him, smiling. I still hear the preacher's voice sometimes, in dreams, telling me I'd regret leaving. Tahu tilted his head. Do you? Only that I didn't run sooner. She reached into her cloak and pulled something from the pocket. A small carved stone shaped like a heart, etched with the spiral flame. This was the first symbol I held that felt like mine. It saved me, gave me something to build around. She pressed it into his hand. Now I give it to you. Not because I owe you anything, but because I choose you, not as my rescuer or protector, but as the man I want to walk beside. Always. Tahu looked at the stone, then at her. Then I give you my name, he said. Not the one the world tried to take, but the one I saved for someone who'd understand it. What does it mean? She asked. Tahwian, he said softly. It means the one who came through fire and brought rain. She smiled through tears. That's not just a name, that's a future. They walked back to the village, hand in hand. No ceremony, no crowd, just quiet nods from those who understood what it meant to live again after being broken. That night, as the stars returned and the drums beat low, Mira, once a discarded bride, danced in the firelight, not as someone claimed, but as someone risen. She didn't need redemption. She had reclaimed herself. And the man beside her? He hadn't saved her. He had simply stood in the storm and waited until she saw her own reflection in its lightning. Together, they built a home made not of walls, but of truth, freedom, and hearts that had chosen each other without fear. And the world they made? It would never again silence her name.